speak in just a moment, Dale, if you're with us, or if you'd like to say a quick hello now. Annabelle's rejoining too, by the looks of it. You able to talk, Dale, or have you got your microphone muted? Okay, that's okay, Dale. We'll we'll talk to you in just a moment. Do you want to say a quick hello, Indy, as Dale and everyone else gets organised?
Yeah, cool. Hello, everyone. Just wanted to say a huge congratulations on being here still for persevering with this, because I know it's been a bit of a myth almost for you and your World Skills experience, and just great job on the submissions so far. And that's all from me.
Thank you, and I'll agree, and like to sort of further Indy's comments. It is really important that you're still with us, and that in itself has been, I guess, you know, you've passed that first test, so we're in the final few months, and we're really impressed with the name card project. We've literally just got an email that's coming from Alex Horton, who's the partnership and brand manager, working with operations team to roll that name card out. So we'll give you some comments on that, and it'll be WorldSkills Australia who then follow that up. We'll talk about the next project today briefly, and I can't see Annabelle. Actually, I do. Hello, Annabelle. Welcome as well. So we have a WA wildcard who have just, this is going to be Annabelle Hazier's first project. And remember that there'll be potentially a couple of virtual competitors from Russia, New Zealand. I've just spoken to Canada. They're very keen. And there'll be a couple more international competitors likely to join as well. So you won't be alone, Annabelle. It's really just gives you a good chance to do a little bit of training before we get stuck into 3 days of actual national comp in August. So I'll go through some of these name cards. You may have seen these posted, but this is fantastic, Christine. So for your first project, we were really impressed. Just removing the white background made this immediately a fantastic, colourful and super strong, easy to read from a distance element. You handled your hair wonderfully, so well done. And the gradient sort of gives it a nice, deep, emotive feel. We enjoyed that. 10 out of 10 for readability. But Indy and Dale are both sort of saying consider how that would roll out for longer names, for different skills. So graphic design technology is a mouthful, but there are other ones. And so, you know, 40, 50 plus skills that'll be on show, and some crazy hyphenated surnames that are probably submitted as well. So that might paint you slightly into a corner, but we love the depth of that. Annabelle, the original Annabelle Cressy is produced a really safe option. The hair here is good choice. Sometimes you might not be given hair that's as easy and clean to mask, but it's a patterning here that we'd like to sort of point out. So the brand's certainly on brand, and the colours are from the brand book. As Indy's mentioned, it feels really human with the use of the handwritten font on top. Again, this, you know, it's readable from a distance, but the hero here is the pattern in the background. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on. Well done, Annabelle. Jordan, this is sort of really different as well. So here there's lots of depth with the drop shadows, good shapes. The shoulders coming out of that inner donut ring is fantastic, but the white here is perhaps something that could have been considered either with patterning, texture, or some soft colour. Good use of typeface. Running the Perth 2021 up is a great idea because it allows the state name to have the hierarchy and the prominence. And you can see this, you know, with once you had the full list of names, hyphenated surnames, and all the skills, that you'd be able to adjust this really easily accordingly. Indy also likes the use of the angles and the rollout of that, and Kelsey's handled that well too, with just those brand book angles. And this is quite a nice way to present the final idea. So it shows the state colours, which are on brand, fantastic readability, having the text on the white. Again, it's getting feedback early on this is the one thing you do get in training that you won't get in comp. So Kelsey reached out early, got a little bit of creative direction, and a great idea to include the QR code. So it's clever thinking. Even though it wasn't part of the brief, you can see Kim, David and Alex at the WorldSkills Australia head office just nodding their head saying, yeah, QR code's a great suggestion. The part hair mask we'll talk about in just a moment after Indy talks, but be warned about that. We tried a similar technique and it cost Indy dearly. So I'll get, if Dale's able to microphone on, he might be able to talk and speak. Dale, over to you. So there might be some issues either with Collaborate or just with microphones in general, but I'll quickly just read through. So it might be PC issue. Yeah, that's okay. Dale's gone over this, really enjoyed your unique styles, individuality and your project standing out. Consider your design working with longer names. So this was the sort of the thing that caught a few people out. So name badges for conference, hyphenated surnames, all of that present these challenging issues. Good use of elements and patterning. Again, we'll come back to patterning towards the end of this session, but that's a great way to gain those extra marks, lift those flat colours, and again, a call to say, look, while we're in the competition and you want some feedback, it's great to reach out. This is in Sao Paulo in Brazil, when Dale was a competitor, and this was his name card from 2015. Some individual feedback. Christine, Annabelle, Jordan and Kelsey get a bit of a write-up. I'll let you guys have a quick read of that. I'll just check the chat. Okay, so Dale can hear us at least. So good job across the board. And Indy, your mic seems to be okay. Did you want to have a bit of a chat before we talk about the hair masking?
Yeah, cool. I think you probably covered most of the things, but my main takeaway from all of the work was that some of them wouldn't work when rolled out. It might not necessarily relate to WorldSkills, but just a good design tip if you're designing a template for anything, always consider the worst case, which would be someone with a super, super long last name or a hyphen or something like that. Imagine you're the designer having to do the rollout, and then you'll probably change the way you design. Good job on the additional elements. We've said it every single call, but adding things that aren't included in the brief gets you marks basically every time. So things like the pattern, a little extra icon, whatever additional elements you create and use throughout all your designs gets you extra points. And one thing I did notice was the great use of angles. During WorldSkills, was super limiting and always used rectangles. I liked things to be really structured, and against other countries, my designs just looked so flat. So good job on using angles and shadows and layers. And that's all from me.
Awesome, thanks, Indy. So this is some of Indy's work. This is day 4 actually. So International Women's Day rollout. It had Instagram, had a billboard, I think, from memory, and some other elements. Collage was really important, and montaging. And so what we did is we decided to save some time, and save some of Indy's time, and only partially mask the hair. And you sort of almost see this as very similar to Kelsey's name card as well. And Colombia, the Netherlands, and Chinese Taipei really sort of hammered her for that. So when you're sort of looking at full marks here, so half a mark for that, you know, has each image been masked? Well, kind of. You could argue that it has, but international judges, when it comes to a yes or no response, said that no, the masking should include the hair, and therefore no marks were awarded. So around 1.5 marks lost for that, plus maybe some poor judgment marks overall. And this was a sort of real separating day. And Dale would know about this. There are some days which really help separate the groups, and I think Indy handled the brief wonderfully. And you can sort of see this is a lot of work that she punched out in that sort of 4th day, tired and getting towards the end of the comp. But again, this was disappointing. So we wanted to sort of include that, so you can not only see the marking and the importance of, if you're asked to mask the hair, you'll know for the future. But little things like this can trip us up. It wasn't the end of the world. We certainly got on with it. But it was interesting to see Kelsey did something very, very similar. And so, yeah, I think you got your angles in here perfectly fine, Indy. So there's a good indication.
I actually remember that day really clearly, because the other days your feedback to me was you got to be more adventurous, and so that day I tried to do something completely not my style at all. It makes me want to cry a little bit, but that's okay.
No, it's good. I mean, you're given these assets, you're sort of given all of 15 minutes to think about it, and then you got to slam through it. So it's fine. So we'll move on to the next brief. So congratulations, everyone. Well done. That wasn't a marked assessment, but again, Alex Horton from WorldSkills Australia will be in touch. She's going to work with who WorldSkills Australia choose. We're sharing this feedback with them as well. So we're June the 3rd today. We've got a short, again, another 2-hour exercise. This shouldn't be super stressful. And if you look carefully at that calendar in terms of where we're headed, we're really only sort of 2 months from day 1. WA is faring really well. I'm really disappointed for Victoria. I've got a mother there and a brother and lots of close friends still in Victoria. So really feel for you, Dale, and everyone in Victoria. And Chrissy as well too. We're really hoping that borders will open up. The last case, or the worst case, would be that we have virtual competitors from the state signing in if they can't fly. But let's just wait and hear from national in terms of getting you across to WA. So, we'll monitor this situation, but would really love to welcome you to Perth if you can fly. So this brief, pretty much the second last brief. I've really sort of had a good thought. Dale's pitched in some ideas, and there is another sort of live brief that's in the wings, which I might save for next month. But this brief is just a really personal, really hyper-constrained, and it's just a typographic exercise. It's a pure design challenge. I've been reading Two-Dimensional Man by Paul Lasar. It's a good read. He's also got the book launch on Vimeo. So you get a really good sense of the book just by watching the Vimeo. It's a lovely hardcover, and it's got some of his great silkscreen posters in it as well. So from this, from reading this, I sort of thought, well, if he can do this in mono, if he can roll out great typographic, a lot of these are for theatre posters and the likes, but this sparked an idea that he had done something very similar. So the next brief is pretty straightforward. You get to choose one of these albums, or you get to choose your own. I've only listed these three just because they're classics and they're really clearly very colourful and really image focused. So it immediately presents a fair challenge to all of you to do this with only type and no colour. So the three choices there immediately give you just looking and visually sort of accepting the challenge on those, but you can also choose your own. So if you've got an album that you absolutely love to death, then by all means bring that to the table. But we only need one. It's just a square album cover sleeve design. We've got 2 mock-ups on a drive that you can share. But the idea is that sorry, Dale, I didn't quite catch that. So the selected 3, or yes, you can choose your own. Use only type, only mono, and ideally only spend. And yeah, that's correct. So don't choose an album that's perhaps already typed. So Train Spotting soundtrack comes to mind straight away with just Helvetica. That would be a cop out. But here we're asking you to think as long as you need, but only spend 2 hours on the actual rollout. Now at competition, you'll have 2,000 plus fonts. So we'll put the Adobe Font Folio on everyone's machine and you'll have access to the full Adobe Font Folio. So you don't have to, bring over fonts. You are welcome to. We'll talk about that more perhaps around the next brief. And this includes music and typefaces. We don't want you to bring thousands of your own fonts or your own albums. It's only 3 days of comp, but we'll clarify that. Usually it's only 20 of your favorite fonts, but we'll have the entire font folio for you to use. For this exercise, we're really only after one typeface, or in this case, it could be a type family. That gives you a thin, a bold, italics, for example. Now, Typewolf has a great free font guide. It's usually $40 US, but there's a link to download and review that. There's just font alternatives that he lists in there, and it's not a particularly beautiful PDF, but it's like 81 pages of all the best fonts that you know and love and free alternatives, which would be perfect for this brief. Or I'm also following Brandon Nix on Instagram. He does these regular free fonts of the month. He also has paid versions of some of these as well. But Dogtown is on sale this week, I think, in a Brick House, actually. That's just his specimen. And that's free. So you can just download that and use that as a guide. Again, it's completely up to you. You might even have a typeface that you know back to front that will be perfect for the album that you have got in mind. So again, you'll get plenty of font choice at competition. You've got plenty of free options and alternatives with a Typewolf guide that we're sharing with you for free, and of course, bnix.com has got a free font of the month called Brick House, and a couple of others as well, and a few of those assets, including it's bmnix, correct? Yep, is his Instagram handle, and there's a few other assets in there in the Google Drive folder. So that link will take you to the mock-up. There's 2 types of mock-ups, both are vinyl record PSDs, layered, quite easy to sort of throw in your designs. So when we say using black and white only, this is just, again, just one of those foundational type exercises where we really want you to create something that's instantly recognizable, really familiar to the audience. And if I've listened to that album, or if I know it back to front, like either Nirvana or The Dark Side of the Moon, I should be able to still get the gist by just looking at your type and your elements. Yes, you can use some character set elements. So if you've got something with some nice ornaments, or you've got something with particularly nice patterning, or any fists or any glyphs that you would like to use, you can use that. Again, from that same font family, ideally. So don't just chuck in ZAF dingbats and go nuts with your pictograms and your glyphs. I've also been watching HMCT. They've just put up their billboards from their type class, and this fits the bill. So you sort of see that, yes, there's some line work. That's okay. That, you know, that's you could say that that's an underline or an M dash that's been stretched and distorted, but for the most part, this is just patterning that's matching the typeface quite well. And then here we sort of get a little bit fuzzier of what's sort of now moving into illustration, particularly the one on the left feels quite photographic. So be mindful going that far down the line. And just a quick FAQ, can you use photography or can you use illustration? The answer is no. So this is just a quick example of what's acceptable and probably what isn't. Noma Bar is using a bit of colour in there as well, but that would be classed as illustration. The keys are obviously photographic based, and the illustration of the hand is certainly not a glyph. So font family, Dale's absolutely correct. A font family with lots of weight variations is totally okay. And if you shop around, there are font families that have variations on stencil, on and bold and patterning sort of alternatives, big glyph sets. But again, you know, have a look at your current library or check out Typewolf's free fonts. There'll be something out there that matches the style of the music. And yeah, be mindful if we get a copy of that font and we can't find the glyph you've used, then we'll probably say that that's been illustrated or manually created or vectorized, and you've outlined something or a path. Avoid doing that. So before we wrap up and you can ask some questions, we don't have stacks of time. It's only a 21-dayer. We would like to sort of, again, get one in for July. So sort of saying the Thursday or the Friday, the 25th, 24th or 25th would be great. So we can assess over the weekend and do another quick catch up. Try and only spend 2 hours on the actual vectorization or in front of Illustrator, but you can sketch as long as you want. You can include those sketches and you can share those sketches either directly via email or chuck them on Facebook. We're happy for the whole group to see your progress. And then finally, use the Dropbox to submit. You can distress the type, you can warp it, you can go nuts with it, but so long as it's black and white, you know, everything's on the table. And it really is, this is just one of those exercises that there is a beautiful solution. And if you read Paul Assar's book, then Paul actually has one in there which is a beautiful solution, which is part of the reason why we've selected this. So good luck. Any questions? You can use the chats, or if your microphone works, you're welcome to turn on the mic. And Indian Dale, keen to hear your comments as well. This is probably the first time you've seen the full run through of that.
Quick question. Is there any size parameters for what the artboard should be?
Not really. The PSD mock-ups, so if I just go back to the... so there is a standard album size. I haven't really included it because the asset mock-up PSDs in here, you can design this as a poster and then we scale it down. The format's square. So I can't even remember, whatever, we'll call that, you know, 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters. I can probably do a quick Google search and find exactly that dimension. The mock-ups just make it really easy to judge, and it lets other judges know, and people like Russell and other people who are on our Facebook group and following your progress, if they're looking at an album cover and you do, for example, Sergeant Pepper's, and it's a beautiful rendering using great typefaces and really just oozes the Beatles, then they should be able to pick that that's a Redux album of Sergeant Pepper's. And so by just keeping the vinyl in there in that mock-up and then just redesigning the cover, we should know instantly. There shouldn't be any sort of really, you know, scratching around and trying to work out who you're coming from this obscure band that we've never heard of. So my only advice here would be to don't get too caught up in choosing any one of those. So I'm not a huge Killers fan, but I love that cover. I mean, Beatles is a tough one, but again, there's clues there on how you could do it. And Dark Side of the Moon, how will you do that without colour? So there's a challenge in each one of those three, but I don't want to sort of, you know, if you don't like any of those groups, then by all means go out and choose something. But please, you know, when people see an album cover, and if it's of a band they've never heard of, not that you'll lose marks, but it'll be harder for them to understand where you're coming from in black and white, typeface driven only cover. Did that answer the question in a roundabout way? I can actually put that in there perhaps and say, I'll put it as Mills, so not to confuse. Do it fairly large. Now I'll print these out as well. So I'll probably, once you submit this artwork on the mock-up, if you have done it at this size and it's decent artwork, I'd like to print them on the HP Design Jet too. So we've got yeah, both probably indie. There should be a working file, so do submit both, please. So there'll be a working file. Let's say you do a beautiful distressed Photoshop file. Try and keep that high res. Try and keep that about 30 centimeters, 300 dpi. Of course, then you can just mock that up into a small JPEG. I'm not as keen on the mock-up, but that's what will appear on your Facebook. But I'll just clarify that on that slide as well. This is why it's good to get your feedback. So here I'll say PDF and completely up to you. Illustrator or Photoshop is fine. Your program of choice. I think even InDesign's on the cards here just because of its beautiful glyph palette and its amazing optical, and it just seems to work with type better than perhaps Illustrator or Photoshop. Annabelle, you've got a queue as well?
Yeah. If I wanted to, would it count if I could design a typeface outside of the hours, then use that in the 2 hours? Could I do that? Or is that just
Yes.
cheating the system?
No, that's a great, yes, that's absolutely fine. If you spend 2 hours finding the perfect font, or if you can spend 2 hours actually just designing the exact font that you need, dripping with clues into the bands or giving us clues within the typeface DNA itself, then by all means, that's a great question, Annabelle.
Okay.
Yeah, of course, yes. Don't overload yourself and create additional stress though, but do, yeah, give it your best crack. It might not be a full character set. You might not need to design a full typeface, but you could certainly show us some of that process early on as well. That'd be beautiful to see.
Cool. Yeah, because I was like, I like doing hand lettering and building it, so I'm like, does that count?
Yeah, one of the, I actually removed it, but one of, no, I haven't. I've kept it in. So this is hand lettered. I still think that that's okay. So Islam and the Bomb is an example that I've kept in this presentation because it's still, there's no illustration in there. It's clearly been hand rendered type, but it creates the shape. And I think that that's okay, as opposed to perhaps a few of these other ones which are clearly illustrated, pathed, photography, you know, outlined. So I think that's been left in there strategically, because I feel that you won't be penalised if you hand letter. Yeah, that's why I left them in there. These are up for discussion. So the question here is that Musica poster is fine. I mean, that could be a bullet point that's been sliced in half. It's been outlined, and the designers just use that as a pattern. It's the one on the left that I'm perhaps a little bit more cautious of, because that's a photographic element. So here I'll probably argue that's not in the glyph set, and to clarify and to make sure that everyone sort of gets that same information, I'd probably say that that's no good, but that's okay. Does that help clarify for people? We just want to see how you can perform with that constraint. As soon as you start scanning in ribbon, or you start using photographic elements, I just think it's not in the spirit of what we're trying to. So is that okay, Indy? Does that sort of clarify with a yes and a no? Cool. Any other questions? So we're sort of at time. We had really good attendance. So both Annabelle's, thanks and welcome again, Annabelle. Hazia, she's studying here with Diploma of Graphics. Chris is back on board. Thanks for rejoining. Dale, Indy, Jordan and Kelsey today. Any other questions you have, please feel free to email them through. If you think of something, I can then reply to everyone either on Facebook or just send that through to the group via email. But generally, just enjoy this. It might feel a little bit basic. Not to say that this is going to be a brief at National, but there will be a point where you will need to develop and rely on your elements and principles. So this is just just something that's going to be printed. I'm going to actually pin these in the partitions at the convention centre. So they'll just make nice posters that you can take home with you as well. Yeah, there's a client brief. So this is something you get to keep. Thanks, Indy. So I'll put this out on the photo grade glossy HP Design Jet. So there'll be beautiful, rich black prints, and you get to roll this up and put it on your wall, and hopefully people will come in and sort of nod their head in agreement that they know what sort of music you're into. So that's it for me. Thanks everyone for joining. It's really good to see you all online, and we'll leave it at that. I'll post the recording, I'll post the links and all the assets on the Facebook channel, and we'll hear from Alex shortly about who's going to be contacted regarding the national name cards. Thanks, Chrissy. Thanks, Kelsey, Annabelle's, Indy and Dale, and thanks, Jordan. Thanks for your time, everyone. Cheers.